The rain was pounding against my face as I stood there, stunned, staring at our front door, our home's door, which had just been slammed in my face. My clothes were getting soaked, but I couldn't move. The words kept echoing in my head, each syllable a knife twisting deeper into my already wounded heart. "You'll never achieve anything on your own. I'm tired of supporting you." That's what Isaac had shouted before pushing me out. 4 years of marriage, destroyed in seconds. 4 years, 1 miscarriage, and a spiral of depression that had consumed me for months. I placed my hand on my still flat stomach, remembering the life that had been growing there just 8 weeks ago. The doctors had called it a natural occurrence, saying that sometimes these things just happen. But Isaac had started treating it like my personal failure, as if I had somehow chosen to lose our child. Standing there in the rain, I realized I had nowhere to go. My parents lived 3 states away, and I'd lost touch with most of my friends during my marriage. Something I now recognized as a classic sign of isolation in an abusive relationship. And yes, it had been abusive. Not physically, but emotionally. A slow, insidious type of control that had eroded my confidence over time. I had lost my job at Mercury Innovations just 3 weeks ago. After returning from medical leave following the miscarriage, I couldn't concentrate, made mistakes, and my performance suffered dramatically. My boss had been sympathetic but firm. The company needed someone reliable in my position. Isaac had been furious when I was let go. "Can't you do anything right?" he had asked, not even attempting to hide his disgust. "I'm tired of carrying you." I hadn't realized that our vows of "for better or worse" had an invisible clause that read, "unless your wife suffers a miscarriage and depression." As I stood in our driveway, rain mixing with my tears, I remembered that my car keys and wallet were still in my purse, which was thankfully slung over my shoulder. At least I had that. I walked to my car, a modest sedan that was fully paid off before I met Isaac. He always complained it wasn't befitting his status at Mercury Innovations, where he worked as a mid-level executive. Mercury Innovations. The irony didn't escape me. The same company that had let me go was the one that was keeping him employed, feeding his ego, and apparently giving him the confidence to discard me like yesterday's trash. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway, with no destination in mind. I just drove, my vision blurred by tears, until I found myself in the parking lot of a small motel on the outskirts of town. It was dingy and depressing, but it would have to do for the night. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my damp clothes, and tried to process what had just happened. My entire life had shattered in the span of minutes. I pulled out my phone and stared at it, wondering who to call. My finger hovered over my parents' number, but shame stopped me. What would I tell them? That the man they had warned me about had finally shown his true colors? That I had failed at my marriage just like I had seemingly failed at everything else lately? Instead, I opened my email, mindlessly scrolling through old messages to distract myself from the pain. And that's when I saw it. An email I hadn't opened, received 3 days ago. The subject line read, "Opportunity at Orion Technologies, urgent." Orion Technologies was Mercury Innovations' biggest competitor. I had met their CEO, Skylar White, at an industry conference last year. We had chatted briefly, and she had seemed impressed by my knowledge and insights. I had forgotten all about it in the fog of my depression. With shaking hands, I opened the email. "Dear Madeline, I was sorry to hear about your departure from Mercury Innovations. Their loss could be our gain. We are looking for someone with your expertise to head up our new product development division. This is a senior position with significant responsibilities and compensation to match. If you're interested, please call me directly at the number below. This opportunity won't remain open for long. Best regards, Skylar White, CEO, Orion Technologies." I read the email 3 times, not quite believing it. A senior position? At Mercury's biggest competitor? This couldn't be real. But what if it was? My finger hovered over the delete button, Isaac's words still fresh in my mind. "You'll never achieve anything on your own." Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't capable of something like this. Maybe I was just setting myself up for another failure, another disappointment. But then, a strange feeling began to replace the numbness and despair. Anger. Pure, clarifying anger. Who was he to decide what I could or couldn't achieve? Who was he to throw me away after one setback? With a newfound determination, I picked up my phone and dialed the number in the email. It was nearly 10 p.m., and I didn't expect anyone to answer. But to my surprise, after 2 rings, a voice came on the line. Skylar White speaking. I took a deep breath. Ms. White, this is Madeline Reed. I just read your email, and I'm interested in discussing the position. There was a pause, and then she said something that made my heart stop. Madeline, I'm glad you called. The position I mentioned in the email has been filled, but I have something even better to discuss with you. How would you feel about joining Orion Technologies as our new Chief Operating Officer? I nearly dropped the phone. Co-o? That would put me on the executive team, several levels above my previous position at Mercury. It seemed impossible, too good to be true. I don't understand, I stammered. Why me? Because I've done my homework on you, Madeline. Your innovations at Mercury were brilliant, but you never got the credit you deserved. Isaac made sure of that. The mention of my husband's name froze the blood in my veins. You know Isaac? Skylar's voice turned cold. Oh yes, I know your husband quite well, and that's part of what I want to discuss with you. Can you meet me for breakfast tomorrow? There's something you need to know about Isaac and Mercury Innovations. Something that might change everything. I gripped the phone tighter, my mind racing with possibilities. What did she know about Isaac that I didn't? What had he done? I'll be there, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Just tell me when and where. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. And beneath that hope, something darker but equally powerful. The desire for justice. Or was it revenge? The rain continued to pound against the motel window, but for the first time since being thrown out of my home, I didn't feel lost. I felt like I was finally finding my way. What I didn't know then was that my path forward would reveal secrets about my husband and Mercury Innovations that would shake me to my core and give me the power to rewrite my own story. I hardly slept that night. The cheap motel bed creaked with every movement, and my mind raced with questions. By the time dawn broke, I had already showered and put on the only change of clothes I had with me, a simple blouse and pants that I kept in my car for emergencies. This certainly qualified as one. At precisely 8 a.m., I walked into the upscale cafe where Skylar had asked to meet me. The contrast between my current state and the polished surroundings made me painfully self-conscious, but I forced myself to hold my head high. I spotted Skylar immediately, a striking woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked black hair cut in a sharp bob. She exuded the kind of confidence I once had, before Isaac had systematically dismantled it. Madeline, she said warmly, standing to greet me. Her eyes took in my appearance, not with judgment, but with understanding. I'm glad you could make it. I slid into the seat across from her, hyper-aware of my wrinkled clothes. Thank you for meeting me on such short notice. A waiter appeared, and Skylar ordered coffee for both of us. Once he left, her expression turned serious. I'll get straight to the point, she said, leaning forward. 3 months ago, Orion Technologies was on the verge of announcing a revolutionary new product, something that would have changed the entire landscape of our industry. I nodded, remembering rumors of a major innovation from Orion. The day before our announcement, we discovered that sensitive information had been leaked to Mercury Innovations. Her eyes hardened. They rushed to develop a similar product based on our research, preparing to beat us to market. My stomach clenched. And you think Isaac was involved? Skylar slid a folder across the table. I don't think, I know. With trembling fingers, I opened the folder. Inside were emails, transaction records, and photographs. Isaac meeting with people I recognized as Mercury's top executives in locations that were clearly meant to be discreet. The evidence was damning. Corporate espionage, I whispered, the reality sinking in. But why show me this? Why offer me a job? Skylar's smile was grim. Because you're brilliant, Madeline. Your work at Mercury was groundbreaking. I've followed your career. And because you deserve to know who you married. I stared at a particularly telling photo, Isaac accepting an envelope in a parking garage. This would ruin him. Yes, it would. And Mercury along with him. She paused. But that's not why I contacted you. I want you at Orion because of your talent, not as some pawn in corporate revenge. The waiter returned with our coffee, and I used the moment to compose myself. When he left, I met Skylar's gaze. There's more to this than you're telling me. Skylar nodded, her expression softening slightly. Smart girl. Yes, there is. Your innovations at Mercury, the ones Isaac took credit for, they're the missing piece we need at Orion. With you on our team, we could not only recover from the leak, but surpass anything Mercury could produce. My mind was reeling. Isaac had taken credit for my work? I had developed several key components for Mercury's systems, but I'd always been told they were just small contributions to larger projects. What innovations? I asked, my voice barely audible. Skylar raised an eyebrow. The adaptive interface for the M7 system, the neural network algorithms for data processing. Your name was buried in the documentation, but they were your creations, weren't they? A cold realization washed over me. Those weren't small contributions. They were the backbone of Mercury's most successful products. Products that had earned Isaac promotions while I remained in the same position for years. He stole my work, I said flatly, the truth finally clicking into place. All those late nights I spent perfecting those systems, and he presented them as his own. Mercury has a habit of allowing that to happen, Skylar said carefully, especially when the ideas come from women. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. All those times Isaac had insisted on reviewing my work before I submitted it. All those meetings he'd attended in my place because he claimed I was too anxious to present effectively. What exactly are you offering me, Skylar? She leaned back, assessing me. Initially, as I said on the phone, the COO position. But there's more. Our current CEO is retiring in 6 months. The board is looking for a successor. Someone with vision. Someone who understands the technology inside and out. I nearly choked on my coffee. You're not suggesting... I am. I'll be moving to head our international division. I've been recommending you as my replacement here. The room seemed to spin. That's impossible. I just lost my job. I'm living in a motel. You're exactly what Orion needs, Skylar cut in. And I think you're exactly what you need right now, too. I stared at her, searching for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. I found none. Why would the board ever agree to this? I'm nobody. Skylar smiled, a genuine smile this time. Because I'm very good at what I do, and I've convinced them that you're worth the risk. All you need to do is prove me right. For the first time in months, I felt something like my old self stirring, the ambitious, confident woman I had been before Isaac had chipped away at my self-worth. And what about Mercury? About Isaac? Skylar's expression turned solemn. That's up to you. We have enough evidence to take legal action against both. But corporate lawsuits are messy, and they take years. There might be other ways to handle the situation. I thought about Isaac's face as he slammed the door, the contempt in his voice as he told me I would never achieve anything on my own. Something hardened inside me. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course. Skylar stood, placing a business card on the table. Take the weekend. Call me Monday with your decision. As she turned to leave, I found myself asking, if I accept, what's the first step? She looked over her shoulder. We announce your appointment immediately. The press release has already been drafted. After she left, I sat alone, staring at the business card. My entire world had been upended twice in less than 24 hours. First, by Isaac's betrayal, and now by this unexpected opportunity. I pulled out my phone and, on an impulse, searched for news about Mercury Innovations. The top result made my blood freeze. Mercury Innovations announces major expansion. Isaac Reed to head new division. There was a photo of Isaac, smiling confidently at a press conference that must have happened just this morning. The article quoted him, "This is a personal triumph after a challenging period. I'm looking forward to this new chapter." A new chapter. While I was picking up the pieces of my shattered life, he was celebrating, moving on as if I had never existed. I stood up so abruptly that my chair scraped loudly against the floor, drawing stares. I didn't care. I walked out of the cafe with one thought burning in my mind. I would accept Skylar's offer, and I would make sure Isaac Reed learned exactly what I was capable of achieving on my own. As I drove back to the motel, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, half expecting it to be Skylar again. Instead, a man's voice spoke. Ms. Reed? This is Henry Blake, head of security at Mercury Innovations. I nearly swerved off the road. How did you get this number? That's not important. What's important is that we need to talk. About your husband, and about some files that went missing the same day you were let go. My heart hammered in my chest. What files? I think you know? His voice was calm but accusing. We've been monitoring your communications. Your meeting with Skylar White this morning was concerning. They were watching me? Had Isaac set this up? I have nothing to say to you, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. That's unfortunate, Blake replied. Because I'm pretty sure you don't want me to share certain information with the police. Information about how those confidential files ended up on your personal drive before they mysteriously disappeared. My blood ran cold. Was he suggesting I had stolen from Mercury? That was impossible. Unless Isaac had set me up, used my access, my credentials to cover his own tracks. I want to meet, Blake continued. Today, 3 p.m., the parking garage at Mercury's building. Come alone. The line went dead before I could respond. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. This changed everything. If Mercury was setting me up to take the fall for corporate espionage, for Isaac's crimes, then accepting Skylar's offer wasn't just about opportunity or revenge anymore. It was about survival. What I didn't know was that walking into that parking garage would lead to a confrontation that would alter the course of not just my career, but my entire life, in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. The Mercury Innovations headquarters loomed before me, a gleaming monolith of glass and steel that had once represented my professional home. Now, it felt like enemy territory. As I pulled into the parking garage at 2:55 p.m., my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. I had spent the hours after Blake's call preparing myself. I'd changed into the most professional outfit I could assemble from my limited possessions, and had stopped at a drugstore to apply some makeup, armor for the confrontation ahead. I needed to look confident, unshaken, the opposite of how I felt. The garage was nearly empty on a Saturday afternoon. My footsteps echoed as I walked toward the designated meeting spot, level B2, near the service elevator. Every shadow seemed threatening, every distant sound making me flinch. You came. The voice behind me made me spin around. Henry Blake stood there, an imposing figure in his tailored suit. I had seen him around the building during my time at Mercury, but had never spoken to him directly. His reputation preceded him. Former military, ruthlessly efficient, fiercely loyal to the company. You didn't leave me much choice, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Blake studied me. Let's be clear about something, Ms. Reed. I know what's happening here. Do you? I challenged, my fear giving way to anger. Because I'm pretty sure I'm being set up for something my husband did. A flicker of something, surprise, crossed his face. Interesting theory. He reached into his jacket, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might pull out a weapon. Instead, he produced a small flash drive. Do you know what this is? I shook my head. This contains security footage from the night certain proprietary information was transferred out of our system. He twirled the drive between his fingers. Would you like to guess who it shows accessing the server room at 2 a.m.? My throat went dry. Isaac. Blake's eyebrows rose slightly. Actually, no. The footage shows you, Ms. Reed. That's impossible, I whispered. I was never... The biometric scan confirms it was your access card, your fingerprint. He took a step closer. But here's where things get interesting. The person in that footage doesn't move like you, doesn't stand like you. I stared at him, uncomprehending. I've been head of security here for 15 years, Blake continued. I notice things. Like how Isaac Reed suddenly started wearing his wife's access card on his wrist instead of around his neck 3 months ago. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He stole my card, used my credentials. Blake nodded. And conveniently, You were let go shortly after the data breach was discovered. Perfect scapegoat. Why are you telling me this? I asked, suspicion rising. Why not take this to the board? Because the board is compromised. His voice dropped lower. CEO Preston and your husband are close. Too close. Any evidence I bring against Isaac mysteriously disappears. I've been building my case for months, but I need more. I crossed my arms, trying to process this new information. So why approach me? Because you're now talking to Orion Technologies. He held up his phone, showing a long-distance photo of me and Skylar at the cafe that morning. And that gives us leverage. Us? There are people at Mercury who don't approve of what Isaac and Preston are doing. People who believe in honest innovation. The pieces were falling into place. You want me to be your inside person at Orion. Blake shook his head. I want you to help me expose what's happening at Mercury. Before your husband and Preston destroy everything this company stands for. I laughed bitterly. Why should I help Mercury after what they did to me? They discarded me without a second thought. Not Mercury, Blake corrected. Preston and Isaac. The company is just their vehicle. I considered his words, thinking of all the colleagues I'd worked with, people who had no idea what their leadership was doing. What exactly are you asking me to do? Blake pocketed the flash drive. Accept Orion's offer, become their COO, but feed me information, anything that confirms Mercury stole Orion's technology. With evidence from both sides, we can build an airtight case. You're asking me to be a double agent, I said flatly. I'm asking you to help deliver justice. His expression softened slightly. And to clear your name. Right now, on paper, you're the prime suspect in an industrial espionage case. The weight of his words sank in. Even if I went to Orion, the shadow of these accusations could follow me, especially if Isaac was setting me up to take the fall. I need time to think, I said, echoing what I'd told Skylar earlier. Blake checked his watch. You have until Monday. That's when the FBI will receive an anonymous tip about your involvement in the data breach. My blood turned to ice. You would do that? After telling me you know I'm innocent? Not me. His eyes were hard again. But someone will. Isaac is covering his tracks, and you're the perfect fall person. Disgruntled ex-employee, recently fired, with apparent access to the stolen information? I felt cornered, trapped between impossible choices. How do I know I can trust you? You don't. Blake was brutally honest. But consider this. I'm the only one who's shown you the whole board. Skylar didn't tell you about the FBI investigation, did she? About how close they are to making arrests. She hadn't. And that omission now seemed significant. Take this. Blake handed me a burner phone. My number is the only one programmed in it. When you've made your decision, call me. As he turned to leave, I called after him. What does Isaac get out of all this? Why risk everything? Blake paused. Money, initially. Preston promised him a percentage of the profits from the stolen technology. But now, he shrugged. Power. Preston is grooming him as his successor. The irony was almost too much to bear. While Skylar was considering me for CEO at Orion, Isaac was being positioned for the same role at Mercury. There's one more thing you should know, Blake added. Your miscarriage? The stress that contributed to it? That came right after Isaac started this scheme. The timing wasn't coincidental. He walked away, leaving me standing alone in the cold concrete garage, his last words echoing in my mind. Had Isaac's betrayal begun long before he pushed me out of our home? Had the stress of his double life, his lies, contributed to my losing our baby? I made it back to my car before the tears came. Not tears of sadness this time, but of rage. Pure, clarifying rage that burned away my confusion and left absolute certainty in its place. I pulled out my phone, my regular phone, and called Skylar. I accept the position, I said when she answered. But I have conditions. I'm listening, she replied. First, I need complete transparency about Orion's investigation into Mercury's theft of your technology, including any FBI involvement. There was a pause. Then, you've been talking to someone at Mercury. Second, I continued, ignoring her comment, I want an accelerated timeline for the CEO transition. 3 months, not 6. Madeline. Third, I want resources to build my own team. People I can trust. Skylar was silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, "Come to my office tomorrow. 10 a.m. We'll discuss your conditions." After we hung up, I sat in my car, staring at the burner phone Blake had given me. I had just committed to something, but I wasn't entirely sure what. Was I going to be Skylar's COO, working to rebuild Orion? Blake's informant, helping to expose Isaac and Preston? Or was I charting my own course, using them both to achieve my own ends? The answer came to me with startling clarity. All of the above. I started my car and drove away from Mercury Innovations, my mind already formulating a plan. I would take what Skylar offered, use what Blake provided, and build something neither of them expected. Something that would ensure Isaac Reed understood exactly what I was capable of achieving on my own. I just needed to be careful, to trust no one completely, because now I knew that in the corporate world, just like in my marriage, betrayal could come from those closest to you. What I couldn't have known then was that my path forward would be even more treacherous than I imagined. That within 48 hours, I would discover a secret that would change everything, including who I could trust in this dangerous game. My meeting with Skylar on Sunday morning started precisely at 10 a.m. in Orion's sleek headquarters. Unlike Mercury's imposing glass tower, Orion's campus featured modern, sustainable architecture that seemed to embody their forward-thinking approach. Skylar greeted me in the lobby herself, leading me through security and up to the executive floor. I had traded my wrinkled clothes for a new outfit purchased the previous evening. Nothing extravagant, but professional enough to match my newfound determination. "You look different today," Skylar remarked as we entered her spacious corner office. "I feel different," I replied honestly. She gestured for me to sit at a small conference table where coffee and pastries waited. "Let's talk about your conditions." For the next hour, we negotiated. Skylar was initially resistant to accelerating the CEO timeline, but eventually conceded when I demonstrated my knowledge of the technology Orion was developing. Knowledge that even she seemed surprised by. 3 months, she finally agreed. Contingent on performance, of course. "Of course," I echoed. When I brought up the FBI investigation, Skylar's expression tightened. "Who told you about that? Does it matter?" "What matters is that you didn't." She sighed. "The investigation is preliminary. We've cooperated fully, provided evidence of the data theft, but we've been careful not to implicate anyone specifically." "Why not?" "Corporate politics. We need this resolved, but we also need to maintain relationships in the industry." She studied me carefully. "The FBI isn't focused on you, if that's what you're worried about." "I'm worried about transparency," I countered. "If we're going to work together, I need to know exactly what I'm walking into." Skylar nodded slowly. "Fair enough. I'll have legal prepare a complete briefing." She leaned forward. "Now, about your team. Who do you have in mind?" I had spent the night researching, creating a list of potential allies from both Mercury and Orion, people with reputations for integrity and innovation. "I'll need Stella Scott from R&D at Mercury," I began. "Joseph Johnson from your software division. Natalie Patel from—" "Wait," Skylar interrupted. "You want to poach people from Mercury?" "Only the best ones," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "People who should never have been overlooked." By the end of our meeting, we had a solid agreement. I would start immediately as COO, with a transition plan that could see me as CEO within 3 months. I would have authority to build my own team and access to all information regarding Mercury's technology theft. As we concluded, Skylar handed me a keycard and a company phone. "Welcome to Orion, Madeline. I have a feeling you're going to shake things up around here." "That's the plan," I said, accepting the symbols of my new position. On my way out, I asked one final question. "When will the announcement be made?" Skylar smiled. "Tomorrow morning. The press release goes out at 9 a.m. Perfect timing." I spent the rest of Sunday setting up a new apartment. Nothing fancy, but worlds better than the motel. With my new Orion signing bonus, I could afford a comfortable place while I found my footing. Monday morning arrived with a strange sense of calm. I dressed carefully in a power suit I'd purchased the day before, a deliberate choice of Orion's signature blue rather than Mercury's traditional gray. At 8:55 a.m., I sat in my car outside Mercury Innovations, watching employees stream into the building for the work week. At precisely 9 a.m., my phone buzzed with notifications. The press release had gone out. Orion Technologies appoints Madeline Reed as Chief Operating Officer with path to CEO. My phone immediately began ringing with calls from unknown numbers. Journalists, no doubt. I ignored them all and entered Mercury's building, using the visitor entrance. The security guard looked up as I approached. "Madeline Reed for Isaac Reed," I stated calmly. "He's not expecting me." The guard's eyes widened slightly. Perhaps he'd just seen the news, but he processed my visitor badge without comment. "Floor 18, Ms. Reed." "I know where it is," I replied. The elevator ride gave me time to center myself. This confrontation had been brewing since the moment Isaac slammed our front door in my face. But now I was approaching it from a position of power, not vulnerability. Isaac's assistant, Mary, did a double take when I stepped into the executive suite. "Ms. Reed, I didn't— Is he in?" I cut her off politely but firmly. Before she could answer, Isaac's office door opened, and he emerged, engrossed in conversation with CEO Preston Harris. Both men froze when they saw me. "Madeline?" Isaac recovered first, his expression a mix of shock and wariness. "What are you doing here? Are you looking for a handout?" The exact words I had anticipated. So predictable. I smiled, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "No, Isaac. I'm here to sign your resignation." Preston stepped forward, confusion evident. "Ms. Reed, this is highly inappropriate. If you need assistance—" "I don't need anything from Mercury Innovations, Mr. Harris," I replied, turning to him. "But you might want to check your newsfeed." Isaac pulled out his phone, his face paling as he read the headlines. "COO at Orion? This is a joke, right? With a path to CEO," I added. "Not bad for someone who'll never achieve anything on her own, wouldn't you say?" Preston's expression darkened. "This is a conflict of interest. You had access to Mercury proprietary information. Interesting you should mention that." I turned back to Isaac. "Tell me, how did you manage to use my access card without me noticing? Did you take it while I was sleeping? Or was it after my miscarriage, when I was too devastated to function?" Isaac's face contorted. "You've lost your mind. You can't just walk in here and make accusations." "I'm not making accusations," I interrupted. "I'm stating facts. Facts that Henry Blake has been collecting for months." At the mention of Blake's name, both men stiffened. "Blake works for me," Preston said coldly. "Does he?" I raised an eyebrow. "Perhaps you should verify that, along with the location of certain security footage from the night information was stolen from your servers." Isaac took a step toward me, lowering his voice. "Whatever game you think you're playing, you're out of your depth." I didn't flinch. "Am I? Because from where I'm standing, I'm exactly where I need to be." Our standoff was interrupted by the chime of the elevator. The doors opened to reveal Henry Blake, flanked by two men in suits who screamed federal agents even without identification. "Mr. Harris, Mr. Reed," Blake announced formally. "These gentlemen from the FBI would like to ask you some questions regarding the data breach reported by Orion Technologies." The color drained from Isaac's face. He looked at me with a mixture of fury and fear. "You set this up." "No, Isaac," I replied quietly. "You did. I'm just making sure you face the consequences." As the agents approached, I stepped aside, watching as they requested that Isaac and Preston accompany them for questioning. Not an arrest, not yet, but the beginning of the end. Before Isaac was escorted to the elevator, he hissed at me. "This isn't over." "You're right," I agreed. "It's just beginning." As the elevator doors closed on my husband's furious face, Blake approached me. "Bold move, showing up here today." "Strategic," I corrected. "Now everyone at Mercury knows that I've landed on my feet, and they know exactly who to blame when the FBI investigation becomes public knowledge." Blake nodded appreciatively. "You've thought this through." "I've had time." I glanced around the executive suite, where stunned employees were gathering, whispering among themselves. "I should go. I have a new job to start." As I turned to leave, Blake said quietly, "Be careful with Skylar White. She didn't build Orion by being naive." I paused. "What do you mean?" "Check your company phone. The real one, not the burner. There's a file you should see." With that cryptic message, he stepped back into the role of Mercury's head of security, directing employees to return to work as if nothing unusual had happened. In the privacy of my car, I examined my new Orion phone, finding a hidden folder that contained a single document. What I read made my blood run cold. It was a transcript of a conversation between Skylar White and someone identified only as Operative, dated 6 months ago. Operative: "The mole is in place at Mercury. Access protocols established." White: "Excellent. And the Reed situation?" Operative: "She's integral to their R&D. Too loyal to approach directly." White: "Find leverage. Everyone has pressure points." Operative: "Her marriage is showing strain. Husband seems receptive to outside influence." White: "Perfect. Make the approach. Offer whatever's necessary." Operative: "And if she becomes collateral damage?" White: "Unfortunate but acceptable, though potentially useful afterward. Keep that option open." I stared at the screen, the truth crashing down around me. Skylar hadn't offered me the COO position because she recognized my talent. She'd done it because I was the perfect pawn in her corporate chess game, first as the unwitting wife of her operative's target, then as the vengeful ex with insider knowledge. This changed everything. I wasn't just caught between Mercury and Orion. I was being manipulated by both sides. The question now was, what would I do with this information? As I started my car, my resolve hardened. I had accepted Skylar's offer to regain control of my life, to prove Isaac wrong. Now I had a new mission: to outsmart both Skylar White and Isaac Reed at their own game. What neither of them realized was that in underestimating me, in seeing me as either a helpless victim or a useful tool, they had made a critical error, an error I was now perfectly positioned to exploit. And I knew exactly where to start. What I couldn't anticipate was that my first day at Orion would bring me face to face with the one person I never expected to see again. Someone whose presence would force me to question everything I thought I knew about loyalty, betrayal, and the true nature of power. The Orion Technologies campus buzzed with energy as I walked through the main entrance Tuesday morning. Employees glanced my way with poorly concealed curiosity. The new COO, who had mysteriously appeared from their biggest competitor's ranks, was big news. Skylar greeted me in the lobby, her smile perfectly calibrated for the watching audience. "Madeline, ready for your first day?" "More than ready," I replied, matching her enthusiasm while keeping the knowledge of her betrayal locked behind my own practiced smile. We were halfway to the executive elevator when I saw him, the last person I expected to find at Orion. My former mentor at Mercury, Dr. James Wilson, was sitting in the waiting area, gray hair distinctive even from a distance. James had been the one who recognized my potential when I first joined Mercury. He had advocated for my promotions, guided my research, and then suddenly retired 2 years ago, right around the time Isaac's star began rising. When I faltered mid-step, Skylar followed my gaze. "Ah, you recognize Dr. Wilson. He's been consulting for us for the past 18 months. Brilliant mind. 18 months. 6 months after his retirement from Mercury." James looked up, his eyes widening as they met mine. He stood quickly, nodding politely to Skylar but keeping his focus on me. "Madeline," he said, his voice warm but cautious. "I had hoped we'd find a way to work together again." "You knew," I said, the pieces clicking into place. "You knew Skylar was recruiting me." A flash of discomfort crossed his features. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." Skylar glanced between us. "Dr. Wilson has been helping us understand certain technical aspects of Mercury's systems. His insights have been invaluable." "I'm sure they have been," I replied, my mind racing. James had been at Mercury for 20 years before his retirement. He knew everything about their systems, including the innovations I had developed. "Let's continue this in my office," Skylar suggested smoothly, guiding us toward the elevator. Once inside her office, with the door firmly closed, the pretense dropped. "You were Mercury's first mole," I said to James, unable to keep the accusation from my voice. He sighed heavily. "That's a simplistic view of a complex situation. Enlighten me, then." James settled into a chair, looking suddenly older. I saw what was happening at Mercury, how Preston and Isaac were steering the company away from innovation and toward corporate theft. When they forced me into early retirement after I questioned their methods, Skylar approached me. "How convenient," I said coolly. "It was necessary," Skylar cut in. "Mercury was destroying itself from within, and taking brilliant minds like yours down with it." I turned to her, letting a hint of my knowledge show in my expression. "And your concern for brilliant minds led you to target Isaac? To find his, what did you call it? His pressure point?" The slight widening of her eyes confirmed that she understood I'd seen the transcript. "Corporate espionage is a dangerous game," she said carefully. "One that Mercury started. And I was just collateral damage." James leaned forward. "No, Madeline. You were never meant to be hurt. When I learned about your marriage difficulties, your miscarriage, I was the one who insisted Skylar reach out to you." I looked between them, seeing the calculation behind their concern. "You needed me. My knowledge, my anger, my desire for revenge. We needed your brilliance," James corrected. "The rest was leverage." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "At least you're honest about manipulating me." Skylar's expression hardened. "This is business, Madeline. Sometimes the lines blur between right and wrong. But they never disappear entirely," I replied. "Something both you and Isaac seem to have forgotten." I stood, straightening my jacket. "Here's how this is going to work. I will be your COO. I will help Orion develop the next generation of technology, legitimately through innovation, not theft. And in 3 months, as agreed, I will become CEO." Skylar's eyes narrowed. "And if I decide you're not suitable for the position?" I smiled. "Then the FBI might receive an interesting transcript showing how Orion's CEO deliberately targeted Mercury employees for corporate espionage." "You wouldn't," she said, but uncertainty tinged her voice. "I would, just as I would send them evidence of Mercury's theft if you try to renege on our agreement." I turned to James. "I learned from the best, after all, about innovation and leverage." The silence that followed was heavy with tension and a newfound respect. Finally, Skylar laughed, a genuine sound of surprise and admiration. "You're going to be a better CEO than I ever was." "That's the plan," I agreed. The next 3 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. I assembled my team, bringing over key talent from Mercury, including Stella Scott, whose brilliance had been overshadowed by male colleagues for years. I established new protocols for research and development, emphasizing original innovation rather than competitive analysis. Meanwhile, the FBI investigation into Mercury continued. Isaac and Preston were placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. The company's stock plummeted as details of the data theft became public. I kept my distance from the investigation, focusing on Orion's future rather than Mercury's past. But I made sure Blake had everything he needed to ensure justice was served. James became my advisor, his knowledge of both companies proving invaluable as I navigated the transition. He never apologized for his role in recruiting me through manipulation, but his actions spoke of a desire for redemption. The day of my CEO appointment arrived with little fanfare, a deliberate choice on my part. While Skylar preferred grand announcements and press conferences, I had opted for a simple press release and a company-wide email outlining my vision for Orion's future. "You're missing an opportunity for publicity," Skylar remarked as she cleared out her office. "I'm focusing on substance over spectacle," I replied. "Something the industry could use more of." She nodded, accepting the implicit criticism. "Fair enough. The board is impressed with what you've accomplished in 3 months. Their vote was unanimous." "Even yours?" I asked. Skylar smiled. "Especially mine. You've proven yourself more capable than even I anticipated." After she left, I stood alone in what was now my office, taking in the moment. 3 months ago, I had been standing in the rain outside the home I shared with Isaac, destroyed by his betrayal. Now I was CEO of one of the industry's leading companies. My phone buzzed with a text from Blake. "It's done. Isaac and Preston indicted. Thought you'd want to know. Justice, at last." My intercom chimed. "Ms. Reed?" "There's a Isaac Reed here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." I took a deep breath. I had been expecting this. "Send him in." Isaac entered, looking nothing like the confident executive who had thrown me out of our home. His suit was still expensive, but it hung loosely on his frame. The strain of the investigation had taken its toll. "Congratulations on the promotion," he said, his voice hollow. "CEO, impressive." "Thank you," I replied simply. "What can I do for you, Isaac?" He paced the office, unable to meet my eyes. "They're going to convict me. My lawyer says I'm looking at 5 to 10 years. Actions have consequences." He finally looked at me, desperation evident. "I need your help, Madeline. A statement from you about my character, about our marriage. It could make a difference in sentencing." I studied the man I had once loved, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not a monster, not a mastermind, just a flawed, selfish human who had made terrible choices. "What would you say about me?" I asked quietly. "If our positions were reversed?" The question hung in the air between us. We both knew the answer. "That's what I thought," I said. "I won't lie to help you, Isaac. Not after everything." His shoulders slumped. "I didn't deserve you. I see that now." "No," I agreed. "You didn't. But that's not why I won't help you. I won't help because you need to face the consequences of your actions, just as I faced mine." "Your consequences were becoming CEO," he said bitterly. "My consequences were losing my husband, my home, my child, and my sense of self. The fact that I rebuilt from those losses doesn't diminish what they cost me." As security arrived to escort him out, a precaution I had arranged beforehand, Isaac turned back one last time. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." "I know," I said, "but it's not worth much anymore." After he was gone, I walked to the window, looking out over the city. The path that had brought me here was marked by betrayal, manipulation, and pain. But it had also revealed my strength, my resilience, and my capacity for strategic thinking. I had entered the corporate world's dangerous game and emerged victorious not by becoming as ruthless as my opponents, but by being smarter, more careful, and ultimately more innovative. I had won on my own terms. My intercom buzzed again. "Ms. Reed, your executive team is assembled for the strategic planning meeting." "I'll be right there," I replied. As I gathered my materials for the meeting, I spotted my reflection in the glass door of the bookcase. I barely recognized the confident, powerful woman staring back at me. So different from the broken person who had stood in the rain just 3 months ago. "You'll never achieve anything on your own," Isaac had said that night. How wrong he had been. I smiled at my reflection, straightened my shoulders, and walked out to lead my company into the future, on my own terms, with my own vision, and with the unshakable certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. Not as anyone's victim, pawn, or tool, but as a woman who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, a woman who had turned devastation into determination and transformed herself from betrayed wife to boss.